and welcome to another Career Revolution interview series. And today is all about talking to Abigail K, who is a personal branding photographer and personal archetype specialist. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring her on stage and she's going to jump in and tell us all about her career revolutions and what's been going on in her career. Hello, Abigail.
Hi, Licia. How are you?
I'm so good. It's so great to have you here in this formal-ish setting of conversation. We've known each other for a number of years. We've been in each other's orbits. I've been in your academy. You were the amazing person that did my first personal brand photo shoot for my brand and my website. And your talent is just unlimited in terms of where it goes and where it takes you.
Gosh, you're making me blush.
It's amazing to have you here in the Career Evolution series and podcast, because specifically I want to get into talking about your career revolutions, and the amazing things that have happened throughout the trajectory of your working life. And I think I'm going to start with unpacking, the definition of what is a career actually, because in a sense it's this movable, it's not a corporate suit climbing the corporate ladder, right? I mean, you've never really been within a corporate world, and yet you've had such a full, amazing, wonderful career with all the things that you've done. So what's your interpretation of unpacking the word career and understanding what it means?
Yeah, I think for me, and looking at your title here, you've got it in your title right there. It's both calling and evolution. So I think that's how I would tie it together, that it is about uncovering what your calling is and pursuing that calling and understanding, marrying your gifts, your talents with a vehicle through which you can express those gifts and talents for the purposes of making an impact, whatever that impact might be, and understanding that it is not a static concept. It evolves just like you do. And therein lies the career revolution, is that it is in a constant state of revolution and evolution. I think the word itself has taken on an entirely different meaning. And it is no longer this, like corporate-y, businessy, tight, straight-laced kind of concept. The days of finishing school, getting an education, and then entering the job market where you stay for the next however many decades until you get your golden watch, that time is gone. So the definition of the word has evolved as humanity has, and as this individualistic approach to both life and purpose has kind of entered society's norm. I would call it that calling, like the evolution of one's calling.
I love that. Absolutely. And whether we trade our time for a 9-to-5 permanent role that we get paid permanently from one organization, or whether we work on retainer with multiple organizations, or whether we have clients that buy the work that we do, we are the brand, whether we're employed or self-employed, whether we contract, whether we're an entrepreneur, or whether we're an executive in the C-suite, we're the brand. And that's the type of work that you've really been doing some interesting things in that understanding the branding journey and personal and individual brands. And, your earlier work of the Confidence Crusader for women within their 40s was phenomenal and had a massive impact with so many people. I remember going to events and everybody knew you, and everyone has worked with you in some form or other under that way, and your academy that you developed as a result of that. But let's talk about that how branding has shifted, personal identity and personal branding. I mean, a lot of the work that I do with my clients in the career strategy process is understanding career identity, understanding who you are at work, why you do what you do, because that language and that narrative is not available to us because we've been defined by job title, job description, qualification, job function, sometimes even company, is the definition that we've had. But it's obviously about shifting that, it's about changing that, it's about understanding who we are. And culture, the rise of company culture has given call to who do we want to employ, not what qualifications or experience they have. And, the pandemic launched and landed and we've dealt with much of that fallout. But what's evolved as a result of that is how better isn't good enough, different is. Uniquenesses, because the marketplace in every scenario is crowded and busy and there are many voices there. So how do we stand out? Whether we're a supply chain executive, how do we stand out? Or whether we're an entrepreneur or a coach or a consultant or business to business agency, what is our uniqueness? And people want to work with people. People join people in organizations. People hire people in aligned services because of what they stand for. And that branding element is hard to quantify. It requires some investment in self and self-actualization and understanding. So share with us about your branding work, your persona work. Let us share with us that. And then we're going to go into your career revolution stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. And personal branding it's really, bubbled to the surface. And the reason being, I believe, is that the ownership of one's own reality, career, perception, individuals are starting to realize that they no longer need to defer responsibility to those that pay their salaries or defer to, what society expectations dictate. We are in this time of individualism and carving our own paths and being creative and tapping into our unique resources and expressing those resources in a way that aligns with our core truths. And it's like there's been this global permission slip to step up and shine in your truth and to own that truth. And so I think that's what's underlying and why personal branding has suddenly become, and I say suddenly, but it's not sudden, it has been an evolution. It has been coming a long time, but people are more aware of it now. And it used to be that it was a reserved communication strategy for people with huge marketing teams and agencies working behind them, and famous speakers and authors and that kind of thing. And personal branding was for those exclusive, high level tier global leaders, But the reality is, because of the way that communication has evolved in the last decade or two, and now has become so prevalent that every individual who has an internet connection and a recording device, whatever that might look like, they are themselves content creators. They themselves have a voice, and they've realized they can share it. And in so doing, they are able to design and get intentional about what their personal brand is. So it's no longer going with the flow or reverting or deferring responsibility. People are stepping up to the plate and asking the question, how can I define who I am and express that in a manner that aligns with my purpose and what it is, what my calling is, and what my personal evolution looks like, and how am I projecting that and my own perception, how am I projecting my self-perception. And so it's very much this intrinsic go inwards in order to go outwards.
And it just listening to it, it really made me think of what's been the pull for so many of us, and where there's folk who might think, well, I don't need a personal brand because I work over here in this space and I keep to myself, and then this is my family, my community, my place of work. I don't need this personal brand like TikTok, YouTube. What are these things? This is just, that's the thing that's what social media is, and other people hang out on it, and that's not for me. Yet it is if you're on WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is a space and a place that in itself requires you to have, you've got to stand for something or not. I mean, the regulations and not regulations, but the protocol of how you conduct yourself, like there, I suppose what I'm trying to say, there ain't no place to hide, and you can't think you can get away with not having a brand. You are a brand. You need to sort of figure it out, stand for it, and project it, because something's being said about you, whether you want to know it or not. And the internet has got a whole bunch of things about you. So why not do the work to clear it up and decide what you want the world to know than what just kind of summer happens there. And my comment about WhatsApp is how we're all there. There's all communities there, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Telegram, wherever it is. What's the photograph that we use? What is that profile picture? That is the avatar that represents us, whether it's in the neighborhood watch community, more relevant to South Africa, or whether it's in your work stream or a school parent community. People are making assumptions based on what you're choosing to put out there. And if you're not thinking carefully about it, those assumptions are randomly being formed, and you're not playing a part of it. You're not driving that. So we all need to get
yeah, absolutely. And even before social media, unknowingly, we were developing our personal brands. Every time you crafted your CV, your resume, you chose what to put on that resume. You crafted essentially a one-page personal brand, brief about who you are. You're selling yourself to a future employer, and based on what information you put into that document, determined whether they called you in for an interview. So we've been doing it all along. We just haven't had context to understand, the depths that this journey, kind of the scope of this personal branding journey.
Absolutely. So back to you in terms of your evolutions, your career revolutions, the things that shifted and changed in your story, in your journey. And there've been so many. So I'm going to invite you to share with us some of the really notable inflection points that played out.
Yeah, and there have been many. There have been many. And before I go into the journey, I just want to kind of, I used to beat myself up that I had so many inflection points, because it was mentioned to me so many times that, my goodness, like, you're on to the next thing. Like, what are you doing now? There's a new thing, right? And I used to take that as a criticism. I now wear it as a badge of honor. I think it's a sign of the times, but I think it's also a sign of me understanding myself more, which is critical to the personal branding journey. And knowing what I know about myself now, I can look back at all of these inflection points and I can connect the dots, and I understand why each one of those dots had to appear on my path to get me to this point right now. And so it's not about admonishing, if you're feeling that a change is needed and I need to move in a new direction that's completely unrelated to what people know me as. If you've got that calling, that feeling, that knowing that this is a direction you have to go in, follow that. It's not a flight of fancy. It's not something you need to quell. It is something very intentional that you should allow yourself to follow and get curious about. Why is this coming up for me? So I just want to preface that.
And I just want to applaud you for prefacing that, because ain't that the truth? I mean, being equally an explorer profile, you're going to tell us about what that means and what that is. Thank you. But absolutely, like, oh, you mean you're not just comfortable with the work that you're doing? Just settle in and just, you're going to need to settle down and take your time with that and stick with it. No, where is the rule book that says that you've got to stick with something? It's that type of reinvention, revolution, evolution that continues to push and take us to the places that we know that we're serving, that we know that we're doing our work for purpose. So that toxic messaging comes from the past, and it's
outdated.
a hangover in our
Time to let it go.
generation. It's a big hangover in our generation, completely time to let it go. So thank you for letting it go, and thank you for wearing it as a badge of honor. So many people, and I mean, we know it's a thing with younger generations who are like, well, what's it going to look like on my CV if I keep hopping around? Who cares? And if the person who thinks negatively of that, that's a sign that you don't want to be in that organization or community, or
that's a big red flag for you.
Exactly, complete red flag. So go
yeah,
ahead.
Each one of those dots is part of the thread of the tapestry that creates something beautiful and colorful. So embrace it. And so my journey into entrepreneurship, I mean, I won't give you a whole chronological, it's far too long to go into, but I suppose the critical one, and certainly by the most recent one that I think a lot of people experienced, was this forced evolution as a result of the pandemic, right? And so I've been a professional photographer for more than a decade, nearing 15 years. And I specialized with photographing women, helping them build their personal confidence, and that evolved into helping them build their personal brand through photos. And over the years, I was nudged in various directions, both internally, but also externally, to branch out into video, to branch out into public speaking, and starting to do all of these following these other vehicles to help women with their confidence and with their personal brands. And you mentioned earlier that for a time, I donned the title of Confidence Crusader because I was on a mission to help women elevate their confidence. And at the time, my vehicle was through portrait photography. But I realized, looking down the lens of my camera, is that there's something deeper to confidence that was holding women back. And the photo shoot was, the hair and the makeup and everything. And for that day, you feel great, you look great, you get some pretty pictures that you can put on your website, your Instagram, whatever. But I felt like there was a niggle inside that's saying there's more to this, and that the photo shoot experience and the resulting imagery was really like polishing a turd, for lack of a better turn of phrase. But until you've done the work on the inside, no amount of pretty pictures is going to change the way you perceive yourself. There's a lot more work that needs to get done. And as a result of the pandemic, I was forced to stop doing photo shoots because I couldn't be in physical space with my clients. They couldn't have their makeup done. And so everything shut down. And it was at that time that I had to go inward and really assess. And I'd had niggles because I'd gone down these tangents to building online courses, building an online community, I'm very tech savvy. And so continuously exploring what other technologies, digital space things can I learn and explore. Yeah, exactly. And with the pandemic, it was very much an internal exploration. So the focus turned inward as opposed to outward. And I revisited many of the educational resources that I had accumulated over the years. And the one that stood out was the personality archetypes. And having studied communications at university and done industrial psychology, the personality profiling was very interesting to me. And so it's no coincidence that it bubbled to the surface again. And I did this self-analysis of these archetypes, discovered that my dominant archetype is the explorer. And when I discovered that, a penny dropped, because I could reflect back on my entire life from high school all the way through my career as a photographer. And suddenly this veil was lifted, and this realization that all of these adventures I'd gone on, these explorations I'd gone on, they made sense, and they were no longer these wastes of time that I had labeled, or that other people had labeled, that just focus, Abigail, stick with one thing and stick with it. I now realized why I had this compulsion to go and learn, to go and explore, and then to come back onto the main path. And the main path was always helping women with their confidence and their expression. But I had to walk my talk. I had to do my own exploration before I could help other women with their exploration. And so on that journey of self-exploration, I realized that my work as a photographer and a visual content creator was not the beginning of a journey, but was more of a step much later in the journey of a personal brand. And that at the very beginning, the source of a personal brand was self-identity. How do I perceive myself? Because until I understand myself and until I can articulate who I am, everything I build around my personal brand, my website, my visuals, my messaging, my audience, even down to my business model, it will never hook. It will never land because it's not built on a foundation of complete understanding and having this internal compass. And I can now realize in my own journey where certain avenues I went down, why they failed, because it was a decision made on what I saw other people doing, how I saw other people building their business, emulating that, finding, like, oh, okay, I can do it this way because so-and-so did it that way. And instead turning that around and saying, well, I can now see why that didn't work because it doesn't align with who I am and never would. And a very prime example of that is, for instance, building a community, a digital community. In the archetype world, as an explorer, we tend to be on the more introverted side of the spectrum. We're much more self-autonomous. We're much more solo explorers. We're quite happy with our own company and going on our own explorations. And then once we've got some information to share, we'll come back and share it. But the learning process is our own. We don't have to do it with anybody else. We're quite comfortable with that. And where on the other side of the spectrum are more extroverted. An example of a more extroverted archetype is that of the lover, who is all about community, is all about bringing people together, networking, building those relationships, having lots of people around. They are far more suited to building communities than an explorer ever will be. And so it made so much sense when I realized this about myself, that, oh my goodness, my business model, at that time I was deep in the throes of membership, building and all of that kind of thing, and realizing, well, business models and career choices and everything, if it's not aligned with who you are, it's never going to work. So it has to start with you. It has to start with you. And so that for me was a pivotal change. And ever since that uncovering of who I am at the core, everything has changed. My life, my personal life has changed. My business model has changed. My branding has changed. My website, my messaging, my audience has changed. Everything.
And it's that knowing, grounded in who you actually are and being able to identify it. I love the way you said, when you understood what the archetype of an explorer was, how everything in your career from high school made sense, because all of the decisions, all of the motivations, and all of the shifts and the moves that you had made fit in to that pattern. It all fit into place. It's the analogy of defining success in your own terms, whether it's in your career, whether it's not. What is it that you're striving for? What does success look like? And if you're not heading towards your own definition of success, for sure you're following somebody else's, and for sure it's not. You'll get to the end of the rainbow and you won't feel satisfied.
Exactly.
If anything, you'll feel the opposite. You'll feel a deep sense of demotivation. We all know that on the other side of demotivation is burnout, frustration. All that spiral down negative.
And the thing is, like, our individual definitions of success, like we're motivated by different drivers, and each of the archetypes have different emotional drivers. And if you're pursuing, and the thing is like in the digital space and social media, that's where all of our extroverted archetype, personalities hang out, and where they're doing all the thing and expressing themselves authentically. And then you come along in, from a completely different lens, through a completely different lens, thinking that you need to aspire to what you see somebody else aspiring to. And it doesn't matter how much you lie to yourself, it's just that's never going to fulfill you. So you've got to know yourself to be able to understand what will fulfill you. And I know as an explorer that non-conformity is huge for me. It's a very big, my independence, my doing things my own way, my, giving other people permission to uncover for themselves what's real. Don't follow a formula, find out for yourself. Go inwards for your answers, not outwards. Like that for me as an explorer is part of my core truth.
So even if there's a map and a roadmap, you're going to go off the unbeaten path. We are.
We are. And the analogy I love to use is that, I'll be your co-pilot. I'll be your navigator. I can walk you to through the car park to the adventure vehicle. I can give you the map and I can give you the cars to the key to the car or the vehicle. But you have to get into the driver's seat and you have to decide whether you're going to follow the map I've given you or are you going to veer left or veer right. And I'll be there cool. I'll remind you, your compass is inside. Go check your GPS.
Yeah. Amazing. So such valuable, necessary work that's evolved from your career revolution. So thank you for that. Thank you for sticking with not listening to the status quo and sticking with the stuff that you do, not sticking with the stuff that you wanted to do and keep, changing it up. It's so exciting to witness and to hear the stories. And that's exactly what Career Revolution interview series is. It's about listening to people who found their calling in unconventional ways. And I love the golden threads through all of the conversations that I have, and yours highlights so much of that, Abby, in terms of really knowing yourself, knowing who you are, understanding the truth of who you are, and taking those steps forward from that truth. And that is your unique path, and it doesn't look like anyone else's, and it cannot be measured or compared to anyone else's. And in that process of moving forward, whether you work with a coach, whether you don't, whether you invest, whether you're wherever you might be, the tools that you lean into have to suit you in all essence of what you need and who you are. And that realization only comes from that self-exploration, that understanding, that unpacking, and that going inwards. Go in first to figure it out. All the answers are within. I say it all the time in my process and in my the sort of Career Strategy Connect, the sort of first 25 minutes of finding out more about me and me finding out more about potential clients. And it often brings a sense of sort of shock to certain folks' faces when I say, I'm not the guru. I can't give you any answers that you already don't know yourself. And if you feel like you don't know the answers, it might just be that somebody hasn't asked you the right questions. What I have done is built out a framework to get those answers out. What I have done is built out a framework to ask you the right questions, but you're the guru of you. I'm just here to be able to help you navigate towards the car, hand you the keys, show you the map, and then it's up to you whether you want to drive it or not. And I do think that sometimes, particularly from my element of work that I do, which is within the realm of feeling stuck and in a place of friction within one's career, I don't like what I'm doing and I want to change it up and I need some help with that. There is a need for a quick fix. There is I'm sick of this place. Get me out of here. And I just can't go and do that. And that's a transition. And I want a magic wand of a CV and a super great this and the thinking. And I want it all to be built out and tell me where I need to go next. And it's a little bit about our, the mechanisms of this is what you're good at. This is what you're not good at. And this is what you can do. And this is the path for you. Who said that? Sorry, pardon. Where is it that we get told that? Like our benefit, our light, the thing that we bring to the world is unstoppable. And when we know it, we can go and choose to do anything that we want to do. There shouldn't be these limitations, but be that as it may, that too perhaps is a bit of a hangover for our generation from the past.
Most definitely, yeah. We're taught to explore the outside world. We're not taught to explore the inside world.
And what the outside world puts upon us Yeah, there's the revolution. There's the great balls of fire that are coming. So, Abigail, you're going to share all the personality archetype for everybody listening. They can find it from your website, and they can complete it themselves and delve into understanding more about who they are, and then take that completion, that report, and explore, come back to you and unpack what that means. So
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
the links. Yep.
Yeah, in terms of, instant gratification, like within 10 minutes, you can uncover what your dominant and not only what your dominant archetype, but the standing of each of the other 12 archetypes. So, and that's what makes it so exciting, is that each one of us is unique. You and I share the explorer as our dominant one, but our archetypal mix, number 2, number 3, they're different, and that brings that unique flavor. So every single one of us is as unique as your thumbprint. So yeah, abigailk.com/quiz. Easy peasy.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Great. Well, there's going to be a whole bunch of archetypes that are going to be getting some cool
I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Let us know in the
I'm
comments, what's your dominant archetype?
Exactly. I'm going to go back into my archetype and reread it again. I'm excited to further unpack it. But our time here is slowly coming to an end. I think there's going to be more conversations. Abigail K, I don't think it's a one-off, one-shot wonder. I think I'd love to have you back to keep talking, and we'll evolve as things continue to evolve. So, but thank you for sharing. Thank you for your time. Thank you for telling us so many interesting things and sharing your vulnerable journey. In a sense, there's some vulnerability there, and thanks for the super cool, amazing work that you do. Keep doing it, because it's amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, absolutely, this is a conversation we could carry on for ages, so I'd be back anytime.
We could keep going. We could definitely keep going. And links to Abigail's details on LinkedIn. You'll find her via LinkedIn profile. Links will be shared in the comments on YouTube. She's got a great YouTube channel and some really interesting things to subscribe to and watch and listen there. And if you're listening on Anchor FM in the podcast version, you'll also get some clickable links of where to find Abigail. So go off and do your archetype and find out what it is. And thank you, Abigail. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be seeing you on the other side of that archetype deep dive.
Thanks, Licia. It's been great. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.